Your Honor, you know my father, he is the President of the United States. My father is Trump.
Back in 2025, Harrison Donald Trump appeared in court in front of Judge Frank Caprio. The ruling was intense but educating. Let's watch this video and learn something from it.
I wish I could say this was rare. Unfortunately, it wasn't. My clerk knocked on my door Tuesday morning and said, "Judge, you're really not going to like this at 11:30. I looked up from my coffee and the stack of files on my desk. Eleanor's been working these courts for 15 years. When her face looks like that, I pay attention. What is it, I asked. Traffic violations, speed through a school zone, failure to yield to an emergency vehicle. But Judge, she paused, holding the file as if it weighed 50 pounds. The defendant's last name is Harrison. And there's already been 3 phone calls this morning from Washington. I took the file, read the name at the top, Michael Jonathan Harrison, age 24, address in Georgetown. And right there in the notes section, my stomach dropped. Son of current president. 3 calls, I asked? First one came at 8:15 from someone who said they were from the White House Communications Office. Wanted to know if we could, quote, handle this administratively. Second call came from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Said they were just checking on scheduling. Third call, she shook her head. The third call was from someone who wouldn't give their name. Just said it would be, quote, easier for everyone if this case got continued indefinitely. I closed the file and looked at Eleanor. What did you tell them? I told them all the same thing. The court date is at 11:30. The defendant can appear or not appear. That's his choice. Good. But as I sat there reviewing the police report, I could feel it, that pressure that comes when power thinks it can reach through courthouse walls. Officer Martinez had done everything by the book. Dash cam footage, witness statements, and ambulance crew incident report. Everything is documented properly. The facts were simple enough. Tuesday morning, 8:15 a.m., Elmwood Elementary School zone. Speed limit clearly posted at 35 miles per hour. Defendant clocked at 57 miles per hour. Ambulance responding to cardiac emergency gets stuck behind defendant's vehicle for 3 minutes while defendant finishes phone call. Officer Martinez approaches. Defendant immediately begins making threats about the father's position, the officer's career, and the consequences of writing a citation. This wasn't going to be simple. At 11:25, 5 minutes before the scheduled hearing, I watched through my office window as a motorcade pulled up to the courthouse. 3 black SUVs. Not the full presidential detail, but enough to make a statement. Security personnel in dark suits positioned themselves around the building perimeter. At 11:30 sharp, the bailiff called the case. State of Rhode Island versus Michael Jonathan Harrison. Charges of reckless operation, exceeding speed limit in school zone by 22 miles per hour, failure to yield to an emergency vehicle. The defendant walked in like he was entering his own living room. 24 years old, designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, and an attitude that filled the entire courtroom before he even opened his mouth. Behind him walked 3 men in expensive suits, lawyers, handlers, fixers, the kind of entourage that signals power before anyone says a word. But what caught my attention wasn't the expensive clothes. It was the way my court clerk tensed up, the way the bailiff's hand moved slightly toward his radio, the way the gallery, mostly regular folks waiting for their own cases, went completely quiet. The way one of the lawyers immediately began whispering urgently into his phone. Harrison approached the defendant's table like he was walking onto a stage. He nodded to his legal team, adjusted his silk tie, and turned to face me with the kind of confident smile I've seen 1,000 times before, usually right before it disappears. Your Honor, he said, not even waiting for me to speak, I want to make something clear from the start. I looked at him. Mr. Harrison, I haven't asked you anything yet. Right, but I need you to understand who you're dealing with here. He adjusted his tie again, smiled like he was doing me a favor. My father is the President of the United States. One phone call from me, and this whole thing disappears. The room got so quiet, I could hear the old heating vents. Even my court reporter stopped typing for a second. In the gallery, a woman with a parking ticket clutched their purse tighter. An elderly man with a stop sign violation looked around nervously. I set his file down and looked at him directly. Mr. Harrison, in this courtroom, there's only one person who decides what happens to cases. Would you like to know who that is? He shrugged. Look, Judge. He squinted at my nameplate. Judge Caprio. I get it. You have a job to do. But we both know how this works. I make a call. This gets handled quietly. Everybody wins. Everybody wins, I repeated. Tell me, Mr. Harrison, were you winning when you were driving 57 miles per hour through the Elmwood Elementary School zone at 8:15 a.m. on a Tuesday? That's not. Answer my question. It was an emergency. I had a meeting. What kind of emergency? A business meeting. Very important. More important than the emergency that ambulance was responding to? I didn't know about any ambulance. I flipped to page 2 of the police report. Officer Martinez writes here that the ambulance was directly behind you with full lights and sirens for 3 full minutes. Are you saying you didn't notice flashing red and blue lights in your mirror? I was on an important call while driving 57 in a school zone. The call was urgent. I turned to page 3. Officer Martinez writes that when he approached your vehicle, you rolled down your window and immediately said, I read directly from the report, "Do you know who my father is? This badge won't save you if you write me up. I can have you directing traffic in Alaska by tomorrow night." One of his lawyers stood up. Your Honor, if I may. You may not, I said, not looking away from Harrison. Mr. Harrison, did you threaten Officer Martinez's career? That's taken out of context. What's the context for threatening a police officer, Mr. Harrison? I wasn't threatening. I was explaining reality. I read the next section. And when the officer asked for your license and registration, you said, "Call the White House. They'll verify who I am. You don't need to see any papers." That's not exactly what. Then when Officer Martinez informed you that the ambulance behind you was carrying a 68-year-old man having a massive heart attack, and that your refusal to pull over had delayed their arrival at the hospital by 3 minutes, you said, I turned to page 4, looked directly at him. You said, "People die every day. My time is worth more than some stranger in the back of a truck. If it's really urgent, they can take the helicopter." The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat. In the gallery, someone gasped. The court reporter had stopped typing completely. Did you say that, Mr. Harrison? I may have been frustrated. Did you say it? I was trying to explain. Yes or no? Yes. To be clear, you told the police officer that your phone call was more important than getting a heart attack victim to the hospital. Is that correct? It wasn't exactly yes or no. Yes. I opened to page 5. And when Officer Martinez began writing the citation, you got out of your vehicle, which is against protocol during a traffic stop, and said, "My father will hear about this. Your pension, your career, your family's future, all of it depends on what you do in the next 60 seconds. Your Honor, I was upset. You threatened his family? I was making a point about consequences. What consequences? Political consequences. For writing a traffic ticket? For not understanding the bigger picture. I closed the file, set it down, looked at this young man who thought his last name was a get-out-of-jail-free card. Mr. Harrison, let me explain something to you. Your father may be the president, but in this courtroom, the Constitution is president, and the Constitution says justice is blind. He leaned forward in his chair. Judge, you don't understand the kind of pressure I'm under, the media, the scrutiny. I can't be driving like a regular person. So you drive like children's lives don't matter? That's not what I meant. What did you mean? I meant, he stopped, started again. I meant that sometimes rules have to bend. For who? For people in positions of importance. I felt something rise in my chest, not anger, but something deeper. Something my father taught me about right and wrong when I was barely old enough to understand. Mr. Harrison, I've been sitting on this bench for over 30 years. I've seen wealthy defendants, powerful defendants, connected defendants. You know what I've never seen? What? I've never seen a defendant who was too important for accountability. He sat back, and for the first time since he walked in, he looked uncertain. Your Honor, with all due respect, one phone call from my father. Stop right there. The command came out quieter than I expected, but it cut through the room like a knife. Mr. Harrison, are you trying to corrupt a federal judge? No, I'm just... Because that's what you're describing, using presidential influence to interfere with judicial proceedings. His face went pale. I wasn't suggesting... You weren't suggesting that your father would use his office to interfere with a court case. No, Your Honor. Good, because that would be an impeachable offense. The lawyers in the gallery started whispering. My bailiff stepped forward slightly. The court reporter was typing so fast I could hear the keys. Now, I said, opening his file again, let's talk about what actually happened on Tuesday morning. You were driving 57 in a 35-mile-per-hour school zone. Children were arriving for class. You saw the flashing lights of an ambulance in your rearview mirror, and you made a choice. Your Honor, you chose to keep going. You chose to block that ambulance for 3 full minutes while you finished the phone call. And when Officer Martinez pulled you over, you chose to threaten his career rather than take responsibility. He opened his mouth to speak. I'm not finished, I said. Then, when you were informed that your actions delayed emergency medical care, you said someone else's life emergency was less important than your business meeting. I leaned forward. Tell me, Mr. Harrison, if that ambulance had been carrying your father, would your meeting have been worth 3 minutes? He didn't answer. If that had been your mother in that ambulance, would Officer Martinez's badge have mattered more than getting her to the hospital? Still no answer. If those had been your children walking to school when you flew through that zone at 57 miles per hour, would your phone call have been worth their lives? Your Honor, you're twisting my words. I'm using your words, Mr. Harrison. The words you used when you thought your name would protect you. I closed this file and looked at him, really looked at him. 24 years old, probably never heard the word no in his entire life. Probably never had to face consequences for anything. Mr. Harrison, here's what's going to happen. You're going to plead guilty to reckless operation and exceeding the speed limit in a school zone. You're going to pay a fine of $1,200. Your Honor, I'm not finished. You're going to complete 120 hours of community service with the Providence Emergency Medical Services. You will ride with ambulance crews, observe emergency calls, and learn what 3 minutes means when someone's life is on the line. I paused, made sure he was listening. You're going to write a personal letter of apology to Officer Martinez, not drafted by your lawyers, not approved by your communications team, written by you in your own words. You're going to write a personal letter of apology to the paramedics whose ambulance you blocked, specifically EMT Sarah Chen and paramedic Robert Torres, who were trying to save Harold Morrison's life that morning. Judge, that's excessive for a traffic. Furthermore, I continued, you will create and record a public service announcement about traffic safety and emergency vehicle protocols that will run on local television stations. No family name mentioned, no political connections referenced, no White House logo, just you taking responsibility for endangering lives. Your Honor, my client would like to request, his lead attorney began. Your client, I said, not looking away from Harrison, has been doing plenty of requesting this morning. Now he's going to do some complying. I opened this file to a fresh page. Additionally, you will complete a comprehensive driver safety course focused on emergency vehicle protocols and school zone safety. This isn't an online course you can click through in 20 minutes. This is a hands-on program that includes simulation training, ride-alongs with school crossing guards, and emergency response training. This is ridiculous, Harrison said, standing up suddenly. You can't treat me like some common criminal. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear someone's phone buzzing 3 rows back. Mr. Harrison, I said very quietly, sit down. He remained standing. Sit down now, or I'll hold you in contempt. He sat, but the defiance was still there in his posture. You just said I can't treat you like a common criminal. Let me ask you something. When you threatened Officer Martinez's career and his family's future, were you acting like a common criminal? No answer. When you blocked an ambulance carrying a heart attack victim for 3 minutes while you finished the phone call, were you acting like a common criminal? Still nothing. When you endangered children walking to school because you believed your meeting was more important than their lives, were you acting like a common criminal? That's different. How? Because I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Mr. Harrison, intention doesn't change impact. Harold Morrison, that's the 68-year-old man in the ambulance, died 12 minutes after arriving at the hospital. The paramedics said those 3 minutes you cost them were critical. They might have been the difference between life and death. The color drained from his face. You drove like someone who believed rules don't apply to them. You spoke to a police officer like someone who believed authority comes from bloodline instead of badge. You delayed emergency medical care like someone who believed your convenience matters more than someone else's life. I leaned back in my chair. If that's not common criminal thinking, what would you call it? He stared at his hands. I didn't know someone died. Now you do. Does that change anything for you? Yes. Yes, it does. What does it change? Everything. I mean, if I had known. If you had known what? If I had known someone was dying, I would have pulled over immediately. But you did know, Mr. Harrison. Officer Martinez told you it was a cardiac emergency. You said, and I quote, "People die every day." I know what I said. I was wrong. For the first time since he walked in, his voice cracked slightly. I'm waiting for you to tell me what you learned. He looked up. I learned that my name doesn't make me special. I learned that when I use my father's position to threaten people, I'm abusing power. I learned that 3 minutes can be someone's entire life. Anything else? I learned that I've been acting like the worst kind of person, the kind of person who thinks money and power make them untouchable. I opened this file one more time. Additionally, I'm recommending to the Providence Police Department that Officer Martinez receive a commendation for professionalism under pressure. I'm recommending to the EMS department that the crew whose ambulance you blocked receive recognition for maintaining patient care despite interference. I looked directly at Harrison, and I'm putting the following statement on the record. Any future contact from any federal office regarding this case will be referred immediately to the FBI Public Corruption Unit. This case is closed to outside influence. His phone buzzed. He reached for it automatically. Don't, I said. In this courtroom, while court is in session, you are Michael Harrison, defendant, not anybody's son, not anybody's connection, just a young man who has to answer for his choices. He put his hands in his lap. Do you understand these terms, Mr. Harrison? Yes, Your Honor. Do you accept these terms? Yes, Your Honor. You have 60 days to complete the community service, 90 days for the safety course, 30 days for the apologies. The PSA script must be approved by this court before recording. Any questions? No, Your Honor. Then court is adjourned on this matter. Mr. Harrison, I hope the next time you're behind the wheel, you remember that nobody is too important for basic human decency. 2 months later, my phone rang at home. It was Officer Martinez. Judge Caprio, I wanted to let you know that kid Harrison, he's been showing up to his EMS service every week. No cameras, no publicity, just showing up. How's he doing? First week was rough. He threw up during cardiac calls. By week 4, he was helping carry equipment. Yesterday, he helped carry a 90-year-old woman down 3 flights when the elevator was broken. She was having chest pains. When she asked his name, he said Michael. That's it, just Michael. I smiled. Good. Judge, there's something else. You know Harold Morrison, the man who died that day. Harrison found out where he's buried. He visits every week, brings flowers. His widow says he sits there for an hour. Mrs. Morrison knows? She wanted to meet him. They talked. She told him, my husband is gone. That can't be changed, but you're still here. What you do with that matters. What did he say? He asked if he could speak at Harold's granddaughter's wedding next month. Tell everyone what kind of man Harold was. She said yes. 3 weeks later, Sarah Chen called, the EMT from that day. Judge, Michael completed his hours, but he submitted a proposal to the city council. He wants to fund emergency medical technicians in every Providence school. He's calling it the Harold Morrison Emergency Response Initiative. With whose money? His trust fund, $2 million. A month after that, I received a handwritten letter. Judge Caprio, I've completed all requirements, but I'm not done. What I learned changed everything I thought I knew about service and responsibility. When you save a life, you don't just save one person. You save everyone who loves them. I can never bring Harold Morrison back, but I can make sure no one else loses 3 minutes because of arrogance. I've established the Morrison Foundation and enrolled in paramedic training. I want to be the kind of person who can answer when someone calls for help. Thank you for teaching me that accountability isn't punishment. It's the beginning of purpose. P.S. My father wanted you to know he's proud of how you handled my case. He said justice without mercy is tyranny, but mercy without accountability is chaos. You found the right balance. I set the letter down and looked out my office window. Sometimes the most powerful lesson you can teach someone is that nobody, absolutely nobody, is too important for basic human decency. I'm Frank Caprio. Remember, sometimes the best judgment is not in the book, it's in your heart. Thanks for listening, and God bless.
Wow, this is loaded, and I learned a lot from this court case. The most important lesson in life is knowing nobody is too important for basic human decency. What about you? What did you learn? Drop whatever lesson you learned in the comment section. You might inspire someone with your comments. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.